Lord God, we pray your blessing upon each one of us as we seek to do your will this day, that our works may be pleasing in your sight. Bless those who have been given the great responsibility, with great concern for all people who will be affected by their decisions, with wisdom to see beyond what is merely in the short term, with great courage to do what is right, even when it is difficult, with the gift of grace, humility, and compassion. Encourage us all when we put our faith and trust in you. So Lord God, what we know not teach us, what we have not give us, what we are not make us, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. To the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power, and the glory, forever and ever.
This House is now in session. Minutes of the meeting held on Wednesday, 1st April 2020 to be deferred. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that those said minutes be deferred.
The question is that the aforementioned minutes be deferred. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. The aforesaid minutes are deferred.
Messages from Her Excellency the Governor. Petitions, papers.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the Barbados International Business Promotion Corporation, Inc. Invest Barbados annual report for the financial year April 1, 2018 to March 31st, 2019.
Public notices. Private members' notices. Notices of questions. Report from select committees. First reading of bills.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the first reading of the to give the first reading of the Criminal Justice Miscellaneous Provisions Bill 2020 and the first reading of the Control of Disposable Plastics Bill 2020.
Question is that the aforementioned bills be read the first time. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Statements by ministers. Congratulatory or obituary speeches. Personal explanations. Motions for leave of absence. Oral replies to questions. Notice of motion for the adjournment of the House on matter of urgent public importance. Orders of the day.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of standing orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42, subsection 5, 43, and 44 be suspended for the remainder of today's sitting.
The question is that the aforementioned be for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those other members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Mr. Speaker, order number 16 on the supplementary order paper. In the name of the Honorable Attorney General, to move the passing of a resolution to extend the public health emergency.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in relation to a resolution to invite the Chamber to permit the Honourable House to extend what we have described as a public health emergency in relation to COVID-19. I believe, Mr. Speaker, it is well known to the entire country what the world is facing, and indeed Barbados. A few weeks ago, we came before this chamber to declare under the Emergency Management Act, Cap 160A, that we were engaged in fighting a public health emergency. We believe that, acting on the advice of the public health officials, and in particular the Ministry of Health and Wellness, that while we have done a substantial amount of work in relation to containing the virus, that we still appreciate that we are in a very fluid period at this point in time. And even while we have a number of cases, which we have, in the last couple of days, we've not had a number of positive cases, although I believe today we've had one more additional case. We don't want Barbadians to rest on their laurels and believe that all of the efforts of our health officials should now be dashed aside, and that we should rest and be complacent in how we deal with this virus. As a consequence, Mr. Speaker, it is our view that while we continue to ready our various facilities, we have Harrison's Point facility, which has already been able to receive a number of patients from the other two facilities that have been stood up, that we appreciate that while that facility is getting itself ready, that we are still receiving supplies from various territories, we are still receiving donations from various territories to ensure that we have adequate supplies on island to be able to, in the event that there's any community transmission, that as a country that we're able to fight this dreaded virus. That notwithstanding, sir, I think Barbadians have recognized how serious a crisis we are facing. I think that even though there was a lot of concern initially about the long lines at supermarkets and concerns over the systems that were employed, I think there's a general feeling now that we've seen a settling down across the country for the most part of the rush to get items from the supermarket. I think Bajans have now understood that we are not running out of food, but we appreciate that we have to take measures that are necessary at this point in time to be able to keep our population safe. This virus has presented us with a number of challenges. It has changed, the dynamics have changed repeatedly over the course of the past few weeks. We've been told that on different occasions that medical evidence has thrown up some different dynamics, and as a consequence, we have also had to respond to those challenges and the new information that has come to hand. We do not believe that we are out of the woods as yet, and I think that the advice is sound from the Ministry of Health and Wellness in relation to guiding certainly the government of Barbados and the people of Barbados to a position of safety. With that background, sir, I wish to read the resolution to you, which says as follows. Whereas by virtue of Section 28A, subsection 1 of the Emergency Management Act, Cap 160A, the Governor-General is satisfied that an emergency has arisen as a result of a person or an animal having a communicable or notifiable disease. The Governor-General may, by proclamation on the advice of the Prime Minister after the Prime Minister has consulted or has been advised by the Chief Medical Officer, declare that a public health emergency exists. And whereas by Section 28A, subsection 2 of the said Act, a proclamation is issued under Section 28, subsection 1, and shall, unless previously revoked, remain in force for 1 month or such longer period, not exceeding 6 months, as the House of Assembly may determine by a resolution supported by the votes of a majority of all the members of that House. And whereas the said proclamation has not been revoked and is due to expire on the 27th day of April of 2020, and whereas the House of Assembly has, by a vote of the majority of all the members thereof, determined by a resolution to extend the said proclamation, be it resolved that the proclamation aforesaid is hereby extended until the 30th day of June of 2020. Mr. Speaker, in essence, we hope that shortly we will review at the end of the last directive number 3 that has been issued, that we will be in a position in a couple of days to be able to do a full assessment of where we are, and on the advice of public health officials, be in a position to speak to the country again with respect to that directive or any future directives that may become necessary. But again, we ask Barbadians to be mindful that the imposition of a number of these measures are not to create any additional stress or any additional burden on them, but really, as the world continues to grapple with COVID-19 and all of the dynamics of COVID-19, Barbados has not been left behind in the fight against this virus, and as such, it has made us call on all Barbadians of all walks of life to be strong in this fight and to come together to look after the most vulnerable in the society. The government of Barbados has put in place a number of measures to be able to assist persons, to provide relief through the Welfare Department, through the Household Mitigation Unit. We've been trying to reach out to the persons who are most vulnerable in communities. We have been trying to put in place measures to ensure that no person is left behind. And we have continued to appeal to all Barbadians to be their brother's keeper during this crisis. If you know of someone who is elderly that requires assistance, we've asked that persons look out for them and try as much as possible to assist them as they require essential items and essential services to be able to assist them as best as possible. But throughout this period, we have to speak with one voice, Mr. Speaker, because this is not anything that is partisan in nature. It is certainly something that we have never as a country had to face, but I do feel and I continue to be assured that given the support that we've had from all sectors, our healthcare workers, or essential workers, or various supermarket owners, and certainly the persons who work on the front line in the supermarkets, the banks, the hardware stores, all of the institutions where we have allowed for relaxation. We have had tremendous cooperation from them in relation to the health protocols that we've put in place. And I think on behalf of the government, I want to again say thank you to all of them who are engaged in the front line, the persons at the port, at the airport, everyone who has been a part, or police who have been a part of being, in whether a big way or a small way, enabling us as a government and as a country to be able to fight COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, I therefore beg to move that this resolution do now pass.
Okay, second that, sir.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Let me begin brief contribution by publicly again offering my sympathies to the relatives of those Barbadians at home and abroad who have been lost to this infection, this pandemic. I pray for God's sustaining mercies with respect to them, that they would know a sense of peace that comes of Him. Let me also take the opportunity again to express appreciation to those who valiantly serve us on the front lines of this fight, who themselves expose themselves to serious risk to protect the well-being of us, all of us Barbadians, and to protect the interests of this country. I will continue for as long as I'm permitted and as loudly as I might to champion the cause of those who serve us on the front lines, whether we're faced with this type of threat which immediately confronts us, or any other threat that portends injury to our national well-being, our social architecture, or economy. And we have called in the past for a careful look to be taken at those who serve us in these ways. It's not because they're a special people, but because they're doing a special job. When you are in the front lines in security, life and limb is at risk. When you are in the front lines in the health sector, life and limb are at risk. And I believe that we need to, with loud voice as a nation, ensure that those who are serving us now in this cause are aware that we appreciate this service. The notion of hand clapping is appreciated, but as a token gesture. And I believe that when we get past this, a more tangible way or ways must be found to express the appreciation of this country for what these people have done for us, whether it is a one-off financial gift, if the country can afford it, and if the country can't afford it, maybe a token of appreciation in kind, maybe a period of time off from work, but somehow, beyond the clapping of hands and the making of noise and the use of words, we must find a means to tangibly express our appreciation to the hundreds who serve us in this immediate way and beyond this immediate moment. I would like to take the opportunity again to urge Barbadians to listen to the voice of reason, to take the lead as signaled by the government of the day, which we imagine and presume follows the advice of the medical and security professionals. I again entreat Barbadians to take this matter as seriously as it obviously is and follow the protocols as outlined repeatedly. We've had some hiccups and some issues trying to implement some of the regimes and the protocols. That will always happen in any given situation, especially one of this urgency and of this magnitude. We expect those who lead us to bring sober judgment to the cause and to the table and to the situation. We rely on their professionalism to get us through this. And so I urge Barbadians to do that which is asked of them, to ensure that each of us stays safe and that each of us contributes in his or her own way to a resolution of this problem in the shortest possible time. I support, Mr. Speaker, let me be clear, the move to extend this period of public health emergency from the perspective that we're dealing with a very fluid situation, the presence of an infection, a virus which is not fully understood, the spread of which has been rapid and global and has now impacted us here, both in terms of those who are infected and those who have already lost their lives. The impact beyond infection and loss of life is tremendous right across the country, resulting in dislocation and loss of job and loss of employment and all of that. So I support the extension of this period of emergency. I think under the legislation, government could have opted to go for a longer period of time. I think the law does provide for a period of 6 months once the Parliament does approve that by majority vote of its members. I am happy to see that government has not gone for the longer period, but has gone for simply a matter of 7-8 weeks. And that is understood in terms of the fluidity of the situation and the nature of the threat. We have, though, observed over time governments farther afield have used instances of states of emergency, public health emergency, and other forms of emergency cover to extend its life, to implement measures which otherwise perhaps would not find the approval of the public and perhaps otherwise would not find the consent of parliaments. I would just want to advise and encourage this government not to be so disposed as to use the cover of COVID as to attempt to be the type of administration that in the darkness of this hour implements measures or put in place strictures which would not under normal circumstances find concordance from the public of Barbados. And so I advise very strongly that government not use this COVID threat as cover for any such enterprise. This government is also in a position to use the power of numbers, if it is so disposed, to achieve such nefarious ends. And I would want to counsel against that. I want to be very clear that I'm not charging the government with that. I want to be very clear that I'm supporting the measure before us. But I'm simply saying, from my limited experience on this earth, my appreciation for political history, there have been many instances, and some ongoing right now, where governments would have used the power of numbers and the cover of state of emergency to engage in policy positions and other positions which otherwise people would not give consent and give approval. Government should ensure, as is indicated by the move for only 8 weeks or so, government should ensure that there is a continuing signal from its benches that it appreciates the significance of the institution of Parliament. The institution of Parliament, the highest lawmaking body in the land. It is not the cabinet of Barbados, it is the Parliament of Barbados. The situation with which we are faced legislatively now puts some inordinate powers in the bosom or hands of the cabinet, but it should never be lost sight of that the highest lawmaking body, policy-making body in Barbados is the Parliament of Barbados, and therefore nothing should be done that suggests that we're trifling with this institution. And though we are not perhaps met as often as we are usually wont to do, which is traditionally weekly, I would want to very strongly urge government to make sure that the signal is not picked up by Barbadians, that we want to trifle with the Parliament, or that we want to use the immediate threat of COVID to cover any misdeeds which may be uncomfortable to the palates of Barbadians. In saying all of that, I support the measure. Thank you.
Honourable Member for the City of Bridgetown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I do not intend to speak for a long period of time because obviously there's a lot of work to be done, but I really felt that I needed to say something in support of the extension of the emergency as we are here to do this morning and to debate. And I do so because one of the things that I would like to say up front to all persons in the chamber and those who are listening outside of the chamber, that this is not something that those persons who are in public health, and especially those who are on the front line, would wish to do because perhaps the authorities there is there to do it. Because I can say to you that those on the front line, I have people who are involved in contact tracing, and they are doing it from early in the morning to late in the evening, and they get very little time to spend with their family and loved ones. I say that because even though there are restrictions, the restrictions do impact on the lives of those who are working in the front line. Because even during those hours that are made available for them to do their shopping at the supermarket. There are quite a few of them who are unable to take advantage of that because they are out on the front line. So it is impacting on them as well, but they do it. And they do it because they recognize the importance of us being able to do what we are doing. If we have a lockdown on its own, and I've said this elsewhere before, will not help us to get out of this situation. It will facilitate the process of us getting out of this situation, but on its own it does not. It is vitally important, and the public health imperative in terms of what is happening now is to give public health officers the opportunity to make contact with as many people as possible who, through the contact tracing program, would have come into contact with a confirmed case. And this is the importance of it, because the faster we are able to reach those persons, and the more of those persons we are able to reach, the better we will be able to contain the spread of the virus and therefore properly and adequately manage the public health emergency. And this is a very, very vital part of this entire exercise. And just to simplify it and how complex and how complicated it is, if you take a confirmed case as the trunk of a tree, those contacts that we are looking for become the branches. But if one of those branches then become infected, that creates other branches and it spreads, and that is how it is, and it makes it even more difficult to be able to cover and to trace and to adequately service all of those contacts. And that is why in some countries, especially larger countries, and I know people follow CNN and other news media, it is very complex and complicated for them, and it requires a large number of persons given the spread of the virus. What we are trying to do here in Barbados is not to, or to fight desperately for us not to reach that stage where this thing becomes unmanageable. And that is why we have to do it now. And we have to take these measures now. We believe, and with some degree of certainty when they say that, because obviously things can change and we are not absolutely sure as to where we are in terms of a spread, and we're doing everything to find out. But the evidence, the available evidence suggests that we do not have that spread. And we are trying all kinds of things to do so by testing, contact tracing, and also utilizing our polyclinics and other private health institutions to be able to determine if there's been a spike in respiratory cases throughout the system. These are non-COVID related or normal influenza cases and so on. So we are trying all sorts of things, and we said that we're going to be ramping up the testing. But it is very important for us to do so because we firmly believe that if we are able to continue on the current trajectory and we are able to manage this thing now, that we may be able to get out of the worst of it much quicker than might have previously been anticipated, as long as we can do this now. This is what we are hoping for. This is what we are working towards, and hence the reason why we are asking for the extension. And the extension is not designed to really stop people from enjoying the normal way of life. It's a necessity. Why? Because if we visit homes and districts and areas looking for people and we are unable to find persons because people are out on the streets and in other areas and we cannot find them, each time that happens, it makes us more vulnerable as a nation because it makes it more difficult to round up the contacts. And it is through the contact tracing that about 39 of the current set of confirmed cases resulted from contact tracing, and the ability then to monitor, quarantine, or isolate and do the testing, and those persons then became confirmed cases. So it is very vital that we do so, and I am asking the public to cooperate in this regard. The other thing is this. I'm appealing to all of us on this island. If you know or you feel within you that you've come into contact with someone who has been confirmed. If you start to feel ill, please, please, please let us know. Call in. Let us know, because it is vitally important. We would like to get to you for your own sake before the problem becomes so serious that a public health or medical intervention may not necessarily be all that is required for you. Also, we are asking people to act responsibly, because if you know your situation, it is imperative that you do not expose yourself to people, and certainly to many people, because then you're putting all of those persons and communities and families and the nation at risk. And we have to do this together. It is vitally important that we do so. So the next few weeks, as I indicated some time ago, we will be ramping up our testing. I'm happy to report that we were able to conduct 100 tests yesterday. That's the first time we've reached that figure, and it will continue to climb. And I'm also happy to report, as a result of those tests, well, not happy to report, but I should report that one person tested positive. And when I say happy, it is only because one out of 100 gives us a clear an idea that we are on the right track, and that there's hope, that there's promise, and that if we continue doing what we're doing, that we will be able to get out of this and get the country back to as normal a state as is possible. And public health people understand the situation that we're in. It's a delicate balance, because right now, nothing is coming into the Treasury, and there are other healthcare services that require the normal funding that government would provide. For example, the health services contribution, and that goes to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital to take care of all of the other things, persons requiring dialysis treatment, cancer patients, all other patients. So it's not only COVID. And if money is not coming into the Treasury, it means that those contributions will not be there in the numbers that the country would require in order for the normal healthcare service to be able to function. So we understand the balance here, and I can say to you that the officers in public health will continue to work very, very, very hard, because it is in the country's interest that we do so. And I ask all Barbadians to bear with whatever restrictions that are in place, because as the good book says, weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning, and we expect to bring joy to this country by the end of the exercise that we are conducting. With those few words, I'm obliged.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the last member who spoke, as well as the Honourable Leader of the Opposition. It always pleases me when the Honourable Leader of the Opposition supports anything that this administration put forward. But I think it is testimony to the times. It is testimony to the Barbados government's response to the crisis, and the inclusive nature in which we have been dealing with this crisis, that not only the political leaders of other parties are engaged, but also all stakeholders across the country. I want to just give him the assurance, and the entire country, that this administration has no intention of using this crisis to cover up or use anything in this period to its advantage or to the disadvantage of members of our society. I want to remind the honourable member that I think this Parliament, and certainly under this administration, has perhaps met more since coming to office, and has done more pieces of legislation than any other Parliament, I believe, in the history of this country. I think that is testimony to an administration that is prepared to blaze a trail in relation to legislation, and to take the necessary measures to transform Barbadian society, but also governance as we have come to know it. I would go so far, sir, as to indicate to the Honourable Chamber that it is our intention as well to look in the direction of moving to have Parliament in a virtual way. And a little later today, I will be looking to go in that direction, at least to give us the option, in the event that during this state of emergency, that the situation so requires it, that we will have that option available to us, because we do believe that while we may not, at this point, we may be in a situation where we can still visit this place. We do not know what the future holds, but we intend that as we need to obviously do the people's business, that we must do so in whatever mediums that may become available to us. I also want to let him know, with no uncertainty, that the institution of Parliament will continue to be respected. I think it is fair to say that all of the supplementaries thus far that have been brought in the course of the past few weeks during COVID, since the estimates debate, have related to the Ministry of Health and Wellness or to the Ministry of People's Empowerment. Again, it is not any frivolous spending that the government of Barbados has been putting to the country or seeking to engage in, but they have been all things that have been relevant in the fight against COVID-19. So with those few words, Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the fact that we have this solidarity. I encourage Barbadians to continue to pay attention to the messaging, to be patient with us as we get through this period, and to appreciate that while we are in the process of rolling out various measures, that there is no perfect system. But what we certainly have always done as an administration is to listen to the people, and we are prepared at every juncture to continue to do so throughout this entire crisis. So with those few words, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this resolution do not pass.
The question is that this resolution do not pass. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those
Aye.
Mr. Payne? Mr. Prescott? Lieutenant Colonel Bostick? Dr. Duguid? Who's that behind there? Mr. Ford? Mr. Hinkson? Mr. Clark? Mr. Toppin? Mr. Rowe? Bishop Joseph Adderley? Mr. Abrams? Mr. Griffith? Mr. Phillips? Mr. Strawn? Mr. Humphrey? Mr. King?
Aye.
And Ms. Brown?
Aye.
I remember, Mr. Philip, can you turn off your mic?
Honourable members voted 18.
The question is that this resolution do not pass. This resolution is hereby passed.
Mr. Speaker, that was actually order number 18 in our paper. There's an error on the actual order
Instead
paper.
of 16
It is actually order number 18,
and not 16.
not 16. We now move to order number 16, in the name of the Honourable Attorney General, to move the second reading of the Criminal Justice Miscellaneous Provisions Bill 2020.
Honourable Member for St. Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, his voice is clear. To me, it seems a little bit muffled when he speaks in this manner. Mr. Speaker, I hope that perfectly audible. But it's a strange feeling trying to speak through this fabric. And it will force me, therefore, to be brief in my presentation. Mr. Speaker, we are currently in a state of emergency, and at this point in time, there are no criminal cases being done in courts. In fact, the only matters that are being done in the courts are matters that are urgent, and in every case, these are being done remotely. But we anticipate that at some point in time, we're going to move out of this crisis, and when that happens, I anticipate that we will be looking to start back criminal cases in earnest. The Chamber would know that we currently have 5 High Court judges doing criminal matters. The judges and the bar have considered a number of issues which are attendant with the conduct of trials at this point in time. And certain representations have been made to the Attorney General asking that these, among others, be addressed. Today, sir, the Chamber is being asked to deal with only 3 small matters. One of them is to repeal a small enactment or a small amendment that was previously made in 2018. The genesis of that amendment was under the last administration in 2017, and having no policy variance between the last administration and this one on that particular issue, we brought it to Parliament and passed it. But sometimes, sir, we recognize that the theory of a particular thing is very different to how it operates in practice. And even though you try as you might to get it right every time, that is sometimes difficult. And that piece of legislation, sir, had to do with what we call fitness to plead. And it required a High Court judge doing a criminal trial to conduct an assessment of whether an accused person, when he comes to trial, is mentally fit to plead. But it was recognized, sir, that the best time for that to happen is not when he shows up at his trial, but when the matter is being investigated, because it is the mental capacity of an accused person at the time of the offense that is of paramount relevance. So to then go through a whole inquiry on the person's fitness to plead at trial, while could be important, it was felt that it was hampering the system. And it also meant that when a matter was ready for trial, a judge, instead of being able to commence the trial, had to then engage the psychiatric hospital to determine whether an accused person was fit to plead, and that, of course, then delays matters. Consultation with the bar, the DPP, and the bench, it was recommended that really we ought to revert back to the original system, and therefore we are seeking to repeal that amendment to the legislation and to replace it with what was there before. The other 2 matters, sir, one of them relates to the right of an accused person to give what is called an unsworn statement from the dock. In the course of a criminal trial, remember the first principles: an accused has the right against self-incrimination. It is for the prosecution to prove its case. So an accused has an option of saying nothing or of bringing evidence. There is a common law right that exists and is followed in Barbados for an accused person to give what is called an unsworn statement from the dock, which is to say that during the course of his trial, after the defense has completed its case, the accused person can stand and make a statement without taking an oath. That's why it's called an unsworn statement. But the practical impact of that, sir, is because it is not sworn, he cannot be cross-examined on it. And in fact, there's a lot of jurisprudence which says that it is not a statement at all, it is more accurately called an argument. Because if you can't be cross-examined on it, all you're doing really is espousing a particular position. Sir, unsworn statements from the dock have long been abolished in England. They've been abolished in Australia. I think they've been abolished in South Africa. In fact, I'm sure they've been abolished in South Africa. And they have also been abolished in several other Caribbean jurisdictions. It has been the recommendation of the criminal bench after discussions with the criminal bar that the time has come for us to remove this anachronism from our law and simply provide that an accused person, he can either say nothing, but if he wants to say something, he has to go in the witness stand, give his evidence, and be subject to cross-examination. It does no harm to the accused person because, in fact, the accused person, if he gives his unsworn statement, the judge, in his summary, in his summation, must say to the jury that what the accused has said must not be given the same weight as if it were sworn and tested. You can't ignore that he said it, but it is not to be treated with the same evidential benefit. Moreover, sir, there are some constitutional considerations because in the case of remember we guarantee everyone a fair trial. Where two people are accused, one person may give an unsworn statement from the dock and say, it wasn't me, it was actually him. And try to deflect the attention of the jury and the court to his co-accused. His co-accused is in an invidious position because his co-accused can't challenge him on it. His co-accused can't say, hold on a minute, you saying it was me, it wasn't me. And his co-accused is not in a position to test the statement given against him. And a substantial amount of jurisprudence has evolved which says that to allow, in a case where you have more than one accused to give an unsworn statement which can have the effect of telling the jury it wasn't me, it was him, is to deprive that person who has now had the spotlight shone on him of a fair trial. Because it is for the Crown to prosecute him, not for his co-accused to turn prosecution. So we have considered those arguments, and I'm very happy to say that Cabinet has agreed with the Attorney General and with the bench and the bar that the time has come for us to remove this from our law. We believe it will be a salutary, certainly a modern approach. And I can serve notice, sir, that over the course of the next 2 to 3 months, we're going to be removing from our system a number of the anachronistic practices that have been with us going back 100 years, and they have been kept, but they really serve little value in today's world. The final amendment, sir, that we want to do is an amendment which will address the issue of majority verdicts. Now, sir, in the case of an accused person for murder, you must have a majority verdict in order to convict that person of murder. Oddity arises because if you cannot get a unanimous verdict, sorry? No, you need a unanimous verdict. Sorry, between my ears and the. I try not to listen to myself most times, so it shouldn't surprise me when other people don't. Yes, sir. You require a unanimous verdict. The challenge arises: what happens when you cannot get a unanimous verdict, but you can get a majority verdict? Now, a judge in those circumstances finds himself in a bit of a pickle, because there is no unanimous verdict of murder. In order to convict the person of murder, you must have a unanimous verdict. But there may be sufficient evidence to demonstrate and to find the person guilty of a lesser offense. The difficulty is that the person, a judge may have to then agree that somebody could be convicted of manslaughter in circumstances where the evidence of manslaughter is just not there. The practice that has evolved in other common law jurisdictions, sir, is to allow, you can always get a unanimous verdict, yes, but to allow a majority verdict in circumstances where the death penalty is not being sought. Now, in our Offenses Against the Person Act, we have a number of instances where a death penalty is going to be very seriously considered. And then you have other instances where a judge has total discretion. And therefore, what we're trying to achieve is a situation where when it is clear that a death penalty is not being sought or that the case doesn't merit a death penalty, then we're amending the law to allow for a majority verdict. This is in keeping with current criminal practice. It is fair to both sides, and we think, sir, that this will be a practical way of getting rid of an anomalous and awkward situation. Because often with a lesser verdict, you are convicting a person of an offense that the evidence does not disclose. It may not support self-defense. It may not support any of the things for the lesser charge, but you will accept a majority verdict in a case where the evidence simply does not support it. I strongly support these measures, and I ask the Chamber to give your fiat so that we can make these slight amendments to the 3 legislative instruments that are there. I wish we had more time, sir, to go into matters in relation to the criminal bench and the courts and so on, but that is perhaps a discussion for another day. As I said, there'll be other legislative instruments coming to deal with criminal practice and procedure, and I expect, sir, that by our next sitting, whenever that will be, we should probably have a piece of legislation dealing with judge-only trials. That is something that's currently being actively considered and has been commended to the government of Barbados by the Chief Justice. With those few words, sir, I ask that this bill be read a second time.
The question is that this bill be read a second time. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. We take the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that committee, Nigel? Committee?
It's here.
Yeah, I just wondering who. Oh, okay. I beg to move that you do not leave the chair and that this House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of the bill.
The question is that the Speaker do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We take the ayes have it.
This House is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that clause 1 stand part.
Question is that clause 1 stand part. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Beg to move that clause 2 stand part.
Question is that clause 2 stand part. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
The schedule.
I beg to move that the schedule be the schedule to the bill.
Question is that the schedule be the schedule to the bill. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Madam Chair, I beg that you do not report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee.
Question is that I do not report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman of committees is reporting the passing of one bill in committee. Honourable member for St. Joseph.
I beg to move, Mr. Speaker, that this bill be read a third time.
The question is that the aforementioned bill be read a third time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill do now pass and be cited the Criminal Justice Miscellaneous Provisions Bill 2020.
Ready to second that, sir.
The question is that the aforementioned bill be passed and so cited. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This bill is passed and so cited.
Order number 17 on the paper, sir. The name of the Honourable Minister of Maritime Affairs, the Blue Economy, to move the second reading of the Control of Disposable Plastics Bill 2020.
Honourable member St. Michael South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir. I had no intention of delaying the House unnecessarily. As you are aware, sir, we have had several conversations on the Disposable Plastics Act. The government came, sir, when we took office with a plan to protect our marine space, to largely protect our environment, to implement changes, sir, that we knew would result in behavioral changes for individuals and for people, sir, that would redound to the benefit of the country. As Minister, sir, I had the pleasure over the last year or so of watching the country make very positive changes as we set out on a policy, sir, as a value-driven government determined to protect the environment. This bill, sir, before the House is indeed, sir, a very similar bill to the one that was last year. And we, as a government, sir, have had a series of consultations with various stakeholders. And we sought, sir, only to bring clarity to the issues already outlined in the bill, sir. And having spoken to a number of our partners, sir, and having brought clarity to these issues, sir, we then consulted with the necessary persons in government, the CPC, and we were told, sir, that we were making a few changes and that perhaps it would be best that we just bring a new bill, although it speaks to the exact same issues. What we sought to do really was to identify and itemize a number of the things that we had banned under the bill, so as to make it clear. So we got fortunate in a way because Customs was also going through a similar exercise in terms of clarifying a number of the tariff heads that were used, sir. And so we sought to align the bill with those stars. And sir, I'll go through the bill very quickly. I really do not intend to occupy the chamber for long. Section 2, sir, of the bill, which looks at the definitions. Sir, it contains the same things we had previously banned under the bill. The only amendment that I would have to make, sir, in committee is that we wish to add stirs in the definition. Although stirs is mentioned throughout the bill, it's not mentioned in the definition. So it's the same things that we had previously banned, sir. And we should also state, sir, that it does not affect the Returnable Containers Act. And the Honourable Minister of Environment, sir, will speak to that in due course. But it does not relate to the Returnable Containers Act, which was brought here previously. It's also important to note, Mr. Speaker, sir, that in the course of the last year, Barbadians have made significant changes. Most people now do not even think about these things. When you go to buy a drink, sir, you expect that the container you receive is going to be a compostable or a biodegradable container. You expect, sir, when you engage in almost any transaction, if you're given a fork, you expect it to be a biodegradable fork or a compostable fork. So it has just become something now that we do in the course of our business, sir. And I am pleased to see the way Barbadians have responded over the last year to the changes that we made. Sir, in section 4, we speak, sir, to the single-use plastic bags. And as you are aware, sir, on April 1st, 2020, under the previous act, we banned the use of petroleum-based single-use plastic bags, either for manufacture or for import. And this bill, sir, continues in the same vein, sir. Those bags are still banned under the act, sir, of course, unless you get a special exemption, which we will speak to very shortly. But those things overall are still banned. Cups are still banned, plates, forks, stirrers, straws, for the most part, sir, are still banned. Under section 5, sir, we looked at the prohibition on the prohibition of the single-use plastic bags. And it's very clearly stated, sir, that from the first day of May 2020, no person shall import or manufacture those bags. Again, sir, unless you get a special exemption. Sir, in section 7, of course, in any bill and in any right-thinking country and a right-thinking government, you have to be clear about the things you're going to exempt from this ban and the reasons why. In the previous bill, sir, and in this bill, we sought to exempt bags that were being used to store fish and to store meat and to store vegetables and for veterinary purposes and medical purposes, sir. We sought to allow Barbadians to continue to feel safe in the use of these things. All over the world, sir, even where these things are banned, there are exemptions to allow persons to continue to engage in these things because, sir, plastic still provides, the petroleum-based plastics still provide in some cases, sir, the best protection in terms of hygiene and health. And so we kept those exemptions in consistency with what happens across the world, sir. But in this particular bill, sir, as I said, we had serious consultations with a number of our partners during the course of the last year. And I recall, sir, during one of our consultations, we had representation from the persons in the disabled community. And of all the things that I was told and of all of the letters that I have received, because persons know how I feel in relation to this, but of all that I've received and of all that I've heard, the most stirring and moving, sir, comment came from a representative of the disabled community who said that they had tried all of the biodegradable alternatives. They had tried even using the reusable straws, but that for them, they did not work. And sir, we thought about it as a government, sir, and I'm pleased to report that we have adjusted the legislation to allow persons with disabilities to continue to use straws, petroleum-based straws, so that they could continue to enjoy a standard of living that we would like associated with the persons with disabilities in this country, so that they are not disadvantaged, sir, based on their own advice to me when we were having those consultations. Section 8, sir, of the bill, sir, looks at the offense for persons who would seek to do things that they should not do and make a false claim, sir. And previously, we had asked if you were importing, in the former act, if you were importing Plastic, sir, that we had already banned, the fine in the act was $50,000. But as part of our consultations with customs, they said if persons import any other item under their act, that the fine that they have already prohibited, the fine is $100,000. And so we've kept the fine at $100,000 consistent with the Customs Act. However, sir, in that previous act, we also had a fine of $50,000 on individuals who were using plastics. And I recall, as I said, I often listen to the members in this house, including my good friend from St. Michael West. And I recall that there was some suggestion that $50,000 on individuals might be too high. And we've reduced in this act, sir, in this bill, the fine on individuals who use plastic bags from $50,000 to $5,000, a maximum of $5,000. And therefore, sir, to make it less burdensome for persons who come into contact with these things. However, sir, I should also say, you know, even though we had this act, it was always our intention to foster a kind of voluntary compliance. So you would not find that during the course of the last year, even though we were very stoic as a government in relation to how we brought the act and how we defended it, we never sought to arrest anybody or any of those things. We sought to have conversations, and we had several conversations over the course of the last year to help people to come around to understanding why we felt it was necessary. And sir, I am pleased again to report, sir, that having had the consultations, I believe what we now bring reflects the larger thinking of the vast majority of Barbadians. At section 9, sir, and perhaps this is the biggest difference between this act and the last one, sir. We have allowed the minister some discretion, because in the previous bill and the previous act, we did not allow it, to allow the manufacturer, and it should say import, and I would correct that in committee, but to allow the manufacture or import of petroleum-based plastic bags, sir, in the event that those items are not available in Barbados. And the reason for this, sir, petroleum-based plastic, sorry. The reason for this, sir, is simple. Barbados does not as yet, and I hope that we do in the very near future, Barbados does not produce that organic resin, that natural resin that allows these things to be biodegradable, that allows them to be compostable. And there are situations where our local manufacturers cannot source that resin on the international market. It is hard to get. In fact, sometimes, sir, it is almost impossible for them to source. I would like to get to the point, and perhaps this is the conversation we need to have as a government, about how do we encourage our local entrepreneurs and innovators to be able to create a resin from something Barbadian or at least Caribbean, that we could continue to not only be involved in the move to being environmentally sustainable, but to lead it. And I think that's the direction in which we have to go. There's some Barbadians now who are making bioplastics from all kinds of things, potato skins and other plants. There are people who are looking at sargassum seaweed to be able to do things. I think the time is going to come, sir, where Barbadians or Caribbean people are able to manufacture these products from organic material that is sourced in the Caribbean. We've been working as a ministry with a lot of the international agencies to help support some of the brilliant young minds in this country to be able to do so. But sir, the exemption reads like this, the discretionary clause. Notwithstanding any provision of this act, where there is no suitable material for the manufacture of bio-based items, or B, are no bio-based items available for sale by a wholesaler or a retailer, the minister may, on application made to him in writing, setting out the reasons for unavailability of such materials or items, grant to the applicant permission to manufacture, and it should say or import, which would add in committee, items from petroleum-based materials, or to sell by wholesale or retail such items as the case may be. So in the event that you cannot source these materials, sir, we would have the opportunity, sir, the flexibility to be able to do so. The other reason, sir, is that there is a product called PBAT. It is a polymer, sir, a random occurring polymer, sir, that basically it allows these polymers, sir, to, in a way, to become biodegradable. And that once these polymers are used in certain products, even though they have contained petroleum, they go to a biodegradable state, sir. This allows us to be able to use that because all over the world, sir, they've accepted it. This allows us to be able to use that clause, sir. And then also equally important, I must tell you, sir, when we started this conversation, and when we banned single-use plastic bags on April 1st, none of us, and we had done that ban on April 1st, but remember that legislation was passed, sir, since last year. None of us in this room, sir, none of us across the world, no one, had foreseen the mammoth task before us all in dealing with COVID-19. Sir, what COVID-19 has served to do really is to disrupt supply chains all over the world, so that where we were able to source our biodegradable resin from China in a few weeks, in a month, it is now very, very difficult anywhere in the world to be able to source this biodegradable resin. And in fact, sir, even in cases where you can source it, a lot of the different markets are closed off and they're not allowing you to move product from one country to another. So it has become very difficult, sir, to be able to access it. Sorry, the mask is a little big for the face. So it's become very difficult, sir, to be able to access it. And therefore, sir, we found a situation where our local manufacturers, and here's the reality of things. I am the last person, sir, one would expect to come here and say anything about using petroleum-based bags. Anybody that knows me would know. But the reality of a 2020 Barbados in April is a little bit different from the situation that we faced when we came here a year ago. And that reality tells us, sir, when I spoke to the manufacturers of plastic bags, bearing in mind that I have just gone through great lengths to explain that you cannot really source this organic resin, and they're being told that it's going to take them about 5 months to be able to get the quantity of the resin that we need. But there's some petroleum resin here from before, sir, and they source the biodegradable resin out of China, but they source the petroleum out of the US, and they can still get it out of the US, but it's going to take us months to get the organic resin. What that would mean if we were to come to this place, sir, and to say that under no circumstances are we going to make these adjustments, it would mean, sir, that there would be no bags available in Barbados, because COVID-19 has basically shut down the supply chain in a lot of ways. It has, one, shut down the supply chain and has made sourcing the organic resin very difficult. So it would mean, sir, that we would come to this place, sir, and say, despite the fact that we are asking Barbadians to be as cautious as possible, there will be no plastic bags. Now, I, sir, have spoken to all the local manufacturers. I was very clear with them that the country remains committed to a biodegradable future, a bio-based future, and that any adjustments that we make will be temporary. The acting Prime Minister, sir, in her statement when speaking to this, said that we would allow it for some time, with the great understanding, sir, that given the exigencies of the time, and only given the exigencies of the time, and the fact that the supermarkets were complaining to the acting Prime Minister that they were running low on bags, that only because of that will we allow it for a short space of time, sir. And the manufacturers tell me that they have resin in Barbados that they can only do 1.3 million supermarket bags unless they get another supply of this organic resin. But Barbadians, and these are the t-shirt bags, this is not every plastic bag, these are the t-shirt bags. Barbadians are now using in the supermarkets an average of 3 million bags a month, Mr. Speaker, sir. That our usage of plastic bags has almost tripled in the last few weeks, sir. For me, Mr. Speaker, sir, the thought of using so much petroleum-based plastic bags brings me to the core. But the idea that we would leave Barbadians exposed with no plastic bags at all, because they can't get the bio-based plastic bags, brings me to the core even more. And so as a conscientious government, sir, we made the decision, sir, that we would allow the manufacturers, sir, to be able to source that resin, sir. But the law is very clear. They have to make it, it has to be through application. They have to make a case. They have to say their reasons, sir. And we would allow it for a certain amount of time. And I think during the course of the following week, perhaps I will address it in more clarity about what the structure of that new arrangement would look like. But we will not leave Barbadians exposed, Mr. Speaker, sir. That is in Clause 9, sir. Clause 10 speaks of the committee to be established that looks at bio-based innovation, and I think that has to be one of the most important parts. So there has to be an end game to this. If COVID-19 hasn't taught Barbados that all of us have to change the way we operate, if it hasn't taught us that we have to become a little bit more digital and a little bit more savvy in terms of our understanding of what technology requires of us, if it hasn't taught us certain things about our own humanity, sir, and that we have to be nicer to other people, if this COVID-19 has not taught us a number of things, sir, then I think nothing will. If, sir, we walk away from this disease the same persons that we were when this thing came upon us, sir, then we would find ourselves, sir, in a lot of trouble. And it is for that reason, sir, that we are asking Barbadians to become a lot more bio-based and to be able to generate these products on their own. And through the Ministry of Commerce, sir, the applications will have to be made for the licenses to allow people to import these bio-based licenses. So, sir, in general, that is the application. And that is the bill, sir, before the House. And with that, I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
Honourable Leader, the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Appreciate the contribution of the Honourable Member St. Michael South, Minister of Maritime Affairs and the Blue Economy. Now, when it comes, Mr. Speaker, to the policy re-importation and use of plastics in Barbados, what has been offered, and principally so, is the need, as a reason for the policy, is the need to protect our marine environment. And we all understand that. We understand the importance of the marine environment. We understand the significance of the mandate given to the Honourable Member St. Michael South with reference to his portfolio responsibilities. But the principal reason given for the policy position on importation and use of plastics has related to the protection of the marine environment. I want to raise the matter of damage to our coral formation. I raise it because it is becoming topical again. I raise it because I heard my honorable friend who last spoke making a response to some concerns which have become public in recent days. And he was not speaking with his usual force of voice. And I was a little bit concerned as to what his concerns might be and perhaps not being spoken at the time. And I raise this not to be mischievous in any way. It has to do with the coral formation, which is a tremendous asset around the coast of Barbados. I raised it in recent weeks in this Honourable House with respect to the discharge of sewage at the South Coast, and tried to evoke a response from the Honourable Member for Christchurch East at the time, the Minister responsible for water resources and energy and so on. So I raise it again in that context and not to be mischievous. But some questions would have to be asked and raised. Now, we have had 7, 8, 10, I've heard as high a number as 12 big tourist ships basically parked in our near waters off the port of Barbados, the west coast of Barbados as well. And government has defended its policy position, its position, in terms of allowing these cruise liners to park, whereas other jurisdictions had denied them that privilege. I really want to ask the Honourable Member of St. Michael South the extent to which it would have been considered when that position was adopted and assumed by the government, the extent to which it would have been considered that their sustained presence there over this long period of time potentially, therefore, could have resulted in damage to the coral formation of Barbados. The liners, as we understand it, are no longer populated by tourists, but certainly crews, and I'm not even too sure these are skeleton crews. And these tourist liners can have large numbers, large complements of crew members on board. So the presence there would have had to have been sustained. There would have been obviously some discharge from those vessels, perhaps some discharge in unusual ways, seeing that the vessels actually lie outside of the formal port area. So to what extent was it considered that potentially we could have had some damage to our coral assets? Ministers indicated that there would be some investigation of this matter, and I would want to urge that it be a serious investigation and that it's not a token exercise, because indeed, if damage has occurred, we need to learn from this experience, and we need perhaps to have a proper response from those who are responsible for the damage, if in fact it did occur, as we become aware of the extent to which it in fact has happened. So I'm wondering about the level of seriousness which will be associated with this investigation, and I'm concerned that it not just being a token exercise to say to Barbadians, we have looked into this and so forth and so forth and so on, and then it passes as yesterday's news. Subsequent to a serious investigation, my concern would be as to the level of reporting and wherein will Barbadians learn as to the outcome of that investigation, the level at which, the forum within which such a report will be given. Are we going to see a published report in the press? Are we going to have a ministerial statement on the House? Is it going to be simply words uttered to the media, to the Barbadian public via the media, say we've looked at this and the damage is minimal? Just wondering about the seriousness of the investigation and the context in which a public report on the matter will be given. And perhaps above all else, if there is liability on the part of those cruise liners and operators, if there is liability, would the government be prepared? Would the government be prepared to tackle seriously the issue of compensation? Now, we could easily take a view that Barbados is dependent upon the cruise industry. We could easily take a view that post-COVID, we have to do our very best to get the tourism sector up and running again, and therefore we may not be disposed to offend. But I'm pressing the case that if there are those found to be liable outside of Barbados, that compensation ought to be sought in very serious terms. As I said, Mr. Speaker, I raise the matter not to be mischievous, but it is a concern being raised in the public of Barbados. I think it's a matter to which we should give attention. I'm sure the Honourable young member from St. Michael South will. And I really look forward to seeing what comes out of that. I thank you.
Honourable Mr. Michaelis.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a small intervention, but I believe what is happening today in relation to issues related to the plastic, the amendment to the legislation in relation to plastic is an imperative And I also believe that it is an issue that is just part of all the metrics that we are witnessing at this specific time in our history. Mr. Speaker, a lot of cataclysmic issues are piercing or slicing through the national landscape, the fabric of the national landscape. And it has happened so suddenly in the society that even the laws that we consider to be recent, the word obsolete can be applied. These changes affected almost every institution and every living entity, every living, obviously, organism in the society. Institutions that we recently reformed and legal instruments that we have put in place that we thought were relevant to contemporary times, we are now struggling to see how we can apply and interpret those instruments. Education, at this point, for example, is a good issue that we can highlight. What has happened in the educational system 2 months ago was not even part of the imagination of man in Barbados. It has happened so sharply that we are still trying to find means of how we are going to allow our children to keep up with the required standards at a specific time in order to meet the conditions in relation to our CXC examinations in a manner in which we will be able to treat to what is called the 11 plus by most Barbadians. We are now trying to see how we can make the required adaptation in this environment where children can go to a new form of home learning, not the traditional form, but now using modern technology. And we are also confronted with concerns about, do the parents have the necessary cash in order to purchase the required equipment, the computers, in order to be able to keep up to date with what is required of them. We are facing problems in health, problems that none of us in here ever saw before in our entire lifetime. And that's just a few examples. Some might believe that we've been paying a lot of attention to issues related to the issue of polybags, bags that are not degradable, biodegradable, and that we have actually touched on this legislation a number of times and made a number of adjustments to the legislation. But as I attempted to do in my introduction or my preamble, those required amendments did not escape the challenges and the conditions of the hour in which we live. So I believe that the minister had no choice, because no man born of woman had the specific foresight to be able to determine that we would be in the position that we are in today. Manufacturers, we gave extensions after extensions to manufacturers, to importers of plastic containers, plastic bags. We made adjustments to various forms of legislation. But we never even believed that the demand for the biodegradable materials would have been as such that business people across Barbados would find themselves in a position where they would not have the appropriate, they thought they had surplus. When they checked their inventories, they could not believe anything could occur so severe in the society at this point that demand would not have met supply. And life must still go on. So as a consequence, we still have to make sure that containers and bags must be available to people in the supermarkets across Barbados. There are different types of items, products that must be used in the circumstances, and in some cases, the degradable bags, the biodegradable bags cannot be used for the specific purpose. And we have had a number of issues, social issues in some of the supermarkets, and it caused the minister to reflect on the concerns. He's not a minister living in total isolation of reality. These are demands at present that government must respond to. Sometimes within 24 hours you have to make a change. You have to make a change. So the minister rightfully responds to the concerns, especially of, some people might consider it to be a non-point, because some people do not even know that disabled people exist in society. It's the kind of society that we live in every day. We talk about doing all different kinds of things. Sometimes we don't study how we design. If we design a house, we don't study if we design the house, if a disabled person would like to come to see you. You don't study if when you construct a house, if a disabled person would need to use the washrooms. So there are people who are transparent in the society itself. But the minister took all of that into consideration. And he said, if there's a necessity for me to allow the importation of straws out of polymaterial, that would be best suitable for the disabled community, he decided that he would be liberal enough to import those things for the disabled community. And that's a clear example of a minister with a caring heart. I personally believe that there's no need for any extensive discussion on this. I strongly believe that the minister adequately explained why he had to make these changes. It's not a lack of foresight. It is that these things are not judged by lack of foresight. These are things, as I said, unforeseen things. No man could have seen this. COVID might be 19 years old, but he's a mischievous individual. The things that happen in this society, as I said to you before, sir, we would not even think something like this would happen. We were contemplating just before this, I wonder what kind of hurricane season we will have. The ministries were preparing themselves. We just went through the estimates and everything. We thought that we had put down, we had the new paradigm that we had this year, when we went into the well. One time we never used to use that word anywhere in Parliament. But now we have it in form of a metaphor in the Parliament in itself. So we were involved in what we consider to be revolutionary changes even at the level of Parliament. But when COVID struck this society and struck the international community as a pandemic, we could not believe that a virus could have caused all the changes that we're dealing with, and yet we don't even know the causality of this demon called COVID. And I think that the minister, like any other minister that worth his salt, recognize the importance of responding immediately to the required conditions, not deferring it till next year or a little later. He had a problem that was urgent, and he gave it the kind of treatment that is required, especially when that call for urgency is required. So I want to give the Minister of Maritime Affairs the full support, not only the support as being the parliamentary representative for St. Michael's East, but as Minister of the Environment. Many of the other areas we have already ventilated our views about how plastics were affecting the ocean, how it was affecting the coral reefs around the country, many of the other ills that came as a result to the use of the plastic. But at this moment, we are doing the best that we can in order to respond to the present conditions. And during this period, it is not a period of unchangeable circumstances. It is not permanent. This is an interim period where we have to make a number of adjustments, just like we have to sometimes make adjustments on whether it's a 24-hour curfew or whether it be 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., and all different kinds of interpretations with all men of various logics determining what is right, even in the area of the highest levels of the judiciary. Everybody is trying to wrestle with the logic of modern times. And the same facts before the same men who went to the same institutions, learned the same standard English language, and they got many different interpretations. So this is where we are. I don't want to say in a state of confusion, because that would not be given any credit to what we are attempting to do. But I believe in a genuine sense, everybody is trying to wrestle with the time, and the minister's position in these circumstances is no different. So I want to thank the minister for bringing this document to Parliament at the correct time. And I also am happy that although we're practicing social distancing, we found it a necessity to be here today to make sure that we respond to the concerns of the Barbadian public with the urgency that it deserves. So I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity just to say a few brief remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't wish to detain the chamber, but I do feel it necessary to respond to any concerns of the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, particularly in relation to the issue that he has raised regarding the damage to the coral reefs. I, like him, too, share the concerns. Anything that presents a challenge for us as a country and adds to not only our economic burden, but certainly also to the natural environment, I think it must be of concern to all Barbadians. I can give him the assurance, certainly, and as well as the country, that the minister has already spoken to this issue, but Cabinet's attention has been engaged just up to yesterday as well regarding this matter. I'm happy that the Honourable Minister has been very proactive, and so has his ministry, in speaking to not only the cruise ships, but also in speaking to coastal zone management as well on this matter. And I know that the investigations are ongoing. I believe he's also about to prepare a cabinet paper for circulation to members to consider in terms of the way forward. I don't think any of us could have anticipated a situation where there would have been damage of this nature to the coral reefs, but given that it has taken place, again, like most things, just like COVID, it has made us reflect on the way in which not only our legislation, but certainly the way in which we interface with cruise ships, and the potential impact as well that sometimes even being humanitarian can have in terms of a long-term consequence for the government of Barbados. That said, though, I think that we have still been proactive once it has been drawn to our attention. The ministry is working very closely with the various partners, with the divers, with the coastal zone management and the cruise liners. And I hope that the Honourable Minister will be in a position within the next couple of days to be able to report to the country the outcome of those discussions. I just want to support as well the substantive legislation and to say that when we made the announcement last week, I believe in relation to plastic bags, it was against a background where the retailers who've been working very closely with us would have pointed out that there were some challenges in relation to persons who were bringing reusable plastic bags into the supermarkets, and in many cases the bags were not quite sanitary. As a consequence, I think we recognize that a number of the frontline workers, the actual packers in the supermarket who had agreed to come into the supermarket would have been placed at tremendous risk if we had allowed a situation to continue where something is coming into their environment that certainly the retailers have not been allowed to address. And so we took that on board. I'm happy that the amendment is being made to allow the minister to have the requisite discretion to be able to deal with situations like COVID, but also going forward where, because of any emergency or any great need, that he may have to make such concessions in an environment such as this. The fact of the matter is that all across the world, where countries have moved away from these petroleum bags, during this COVID environment, they're having to go back to a temporary use of the bags being placed into circulation. And it is as a result of the use of reusable bags and obviously the same concerns that our retailers would have had here. So I assured the country that this is not a situation where we are backpedaling on a policy that we have worked tirelessly to be able to put in place. I made a comment to my colleagues that I believe that in the course of the last year, certainly since the minister has been working on this matter, that we have actually seen a change in behavior and the habits of Barbadians. You rarely see the petroleum bags with Barbadians now, but you see more the use of the reusable bags. And I think that, again, just like with COVID, we're going to see changes in behavior that are to be encouraged. Some things will have to be fine-tuned, but I think for the most part, Barbadians have accepted the new change in dispensation as it relates to petroleum bags. What I will also say, Mr. Speaker, is that I think that this is also a perfect opportunity for persons to look at, even in terms of business, being able to look at perhaps how the same reusable bags might be able to be sanitized and maybe create some opportunities in that area. I know there are some discussions ongoing as well in terms of being able to find a way to collect the bags, the petroleum bags, and also do some kind of recycling. So there are some opportunities that in a crisis we can take advantage of, and perhaps this is a prime time as the minister engages to be able to look to the various business entrepreneurs to see whether there are potential opportunities for these things to happen. Overall, I support the amendments. I believe as well that having been such a caring government and having such caring leadership, that we've also taken into account a very key sector, the persons who are confronted with disabilities, and relevant provision has been made in that respect as well. Again, a perfect example of a government that listens and certainly is willing to consult and take the advice from its various stakeholders. And the Honourable Leader of the Opposition would remember that well. With those few words, Mr. Speaker, I support the amendments in its entirety. Thank
Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to thank, as usual, my colleague from St. Michael East for his contribution to this debate. I believe, sir, that we've had the opportunity to partner as men of very similar mind in ministries that have very similar purposes and intentions, sir. And I want to thank him for his contribution, as always. I also want to take the opportunity, sir, very quickly to thank the Acting Prime Minister for not only for her contribution this afternoon, but for her incredible leadership over the last few weeks, sir, in the absence of the substantive Prime Minister, and for her support in this particular matter as well. And last but not least, I want to thank the Honourable Leader of the Opposition as well for his contributions, sir, and for his comments. I've always felt that when the Opposition Leader speaks, sir, he does so with genuine and pure intent, sir. And I shall respond very briefly in like mind. The Acting Prime Minister has already said to the Opposition Leader, sir, that this matter was given some consideration. I also am a little impressed that the opposition leader can understand the intonations of my voice to the extent that he heard my voice on the radio and is wondering about my mood. I am thrilled somewhat, sir, that he knows my voice so well. I must say, sir, that, to answer, that the truth is I spoke into a recording, sir, at the end of a very long afternoon. I think he was right. I mean, I heard it myself, and I sounded like a man at peace with myself. And that perhaps the opposition leader does not know me to be so at peace with myself. But and on a serious note, sir, the questions that were raised, sir, the acting Prime Minister has, in a way, already addressed them. When we were asked, sir, none of us foresaw, of course, this incident happening. We had a situation, sir, where it started with 2 cruise ships, and then eventually we had about 15 cruise ships at some different stages along the coast of Barbados. So it started with 2. At its maximum, it was 15. There's nothing, sir, to hide. And we sought as a country, sir, to be able to service those cruise ships, primarily, sir, out of humanitarian reasons. The Coastal Zone Management Unit and the port, and in association with the Coast Guard, sir, they looked at the coastline of Barbados, and they determined where they felt were the best locations for these ships. We put some, sir, in Carlisle Bay, and the others, sir, around Speightstown or close thereby. The situation is, sir, that as we speak at this moment, the divers from the Coastal Zone Management Unit are currently diving, assessing what is said to be some report of damage to the coral reef, sir, in the Speightstown area, on the west coast area. The reality is that there are two reefs. There's the Bank Reef and the Patch Reef, and then there's a narrow space in between. Most of the ships, sir, were within that narrow space. The opposition leader also made the point, sir, that the cruise ships and their movement, sir, might have damaged the reef, sir. We will know that in the fullness of time. We've seen some reports, sir. The opposition leader also hinted to, sir, about the sewage on board these ships. All ships are allowed they must, by law, if they're in line with the IMO obligations, they must treat their sewage on board. And then they're allowed to release treated sewage outside of a national jurisdiction. I think it's 12 nautical miles. So they would have to leave to be able to release their treated sewage, which is allowed by international standards, and return. It is our initial assessment, sir, that there might be some damage, but we cannot confirm or deny, sir, unless the officers of the Coastal Zone Management Unit has gone to take a look at the reefs and make an assessment of that damage, and they're doing so now. I give the opposition leader and the country and all of my colleagues, of course, that once the assessment is done and the findings are known, that we will inform the public of every single detail in relation to what's happened. There will be no secret, sir. I should also say, as the Prime Minister acting said, that I've already had conversations with the major cruise lines. I've spoken with... No secrets from the opposition leader. We've already spoken, sir, to the major cruise lines in relation to what perhaps could be, because we really do not know for sure. And we've had the assurance, sir, that we would continue to work in partnership with these cruise lines, sir, to be able to address any concerns as they arise. So the government is already ahead of the game, sir. We already, sir, are taking a very proactive approach in terms of resolving these issues, sir. None of us would take lightly to any damage being done. You know, I don't know if the opposition leader is familiar with Hamlet, but there's a scene where Claudius says, "When sorrow comes, they come not as single spies, but in battalions." You know, none of us foresaw COVID. None of us saw this happening. None of us had the opportunity, sir, to look into some crystal ball and see any of this. And that we are working as the situation evolves. What I am very clear, though, in my mind, sir, is that Barbados did the right thing in relation to how we engage with the cruise ships. I am clear in my mind about that. I am also clear in my mind, sir, that if anything has happened, any damage has happened to the cruise line, to the coral, sir, the opposition leader would be informed of it. but the honorable member for St. Michael East, as minister responsible for the environment, will be brought in to any conversation, sir. And knowing the man that he is, sir, he can only speak truth, and certainly truth to power, so that they would understand how we feel in relation to any damage that might have been done to the coral reef. And sir, I want to thank all those who spoke on this bill, sir. And with that, I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg that you do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that the Speaker do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
This House is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Question is that clause 1 stand par. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2. Clause 2 is amended, stand part.
Question is that clause 2 stand par as amended. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that clause 3 stand par.
Question is that clause 3 stand par. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 4.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that clause 4 stand par.
Question is that clause 4 stand par. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 5.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that clause 5 stand par.
Question is that clause 5 stand par. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 6.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that clause 6 stand par.
Question is that clause 6 stands par. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 7.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that clause 7 stand par.
Question is that clause 7 stand par. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 8.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that clause 8 stand par.
Question is that clause 8 stand par. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 9.
Madam Chair, I propose an amendment to clause 9 at 9B. I would like to insert the word or import after the word manufacture in line 4. And beg to move that clause 9 stand par as amended.
Question is that clause 9 with amendment stand par. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 10.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that clause 10 stand par.
Question is that clause, the second question is that clause 10 stand par. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 11.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that clause 11 stand par.
Question is that clause 11 stand par. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 12.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that clause 12 stand par.
Question is that clause 12 stand par. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 13.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that clause 13 stand part.
Question is that clause 13 stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
The first to the fifth schedules.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that the schedules be the schedules to the bill.
Question is that the schedules be the schedules to the bill. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that you do not report to His Honor the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee with amendments.
The seconder? Question is that I do not report to His Honor the Speaker the passing of one bill with amendment. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman of committees has reported the passing of one bill with amendment in committee. Honorable Representative Michael South. The question is that the aforementioned bill be read a third time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. The question is that the aforementioned bill be passed and so cited. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This bill is passed and so cited.
Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Lady of the House would like to recommit government notices.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to give notice of a resolution to grant the sum of $2 million from the Consolidated Fund and to place it at the disposal of the government to supplement the estimates 2020-2021 as shown in the supplementary estimates number 2, 2020-2021.
Government business resumed. Want to do this one now or do the income tax first? Do this one now. Mr. Speaker, item 17 on the supplementary order paper, in the name of the Honourable Leader of the House, to move that the House resolve itself into standing Finance Committee to consider the grant of sums of money for the service of this island.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that you do not leave the chair and that the House resolve itself into standing finance committee.
Beg to second that,
Question
sir.
is that the Speaker do not leave the chair and the House resolve into standing Finance Committee. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Madam Chairman, in name of the Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness, to move the passing of a resolution to grant the sum of $2 million from the Consolidated Fund and to place it at disposal of the government to supplement the estimates 2020-2021 as shown in the supplementary estimates number 2, 2020-21, which form the schedule to the resolution.
Honorable member for the city.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This resolution is intended to place under the Ministry of Health and Wellness Head 86 the sum of $2 million for Program 360, which is primary health care services, and particularly for sub-program 363 laboratory services. And this money is intended to give the ministry the ability to be able to purchase reagents as well as swabs and other materials for the proper functioning of the Best Dos Santos Public Health Laboratory. For the 2020 to 2021 estimates, monies were provided in the sum of $2,996,900 for this sub-program. But of course, that did not take into account the current COVID-19 international health emergency and pandemic. And what this is going to allow us to do is to be able to ramp up the level of testing that we want to do as a country. The Prime Minister, the Honourable Mayor Motley, would have given directions to me and to the ministry to be able to do or provide for at least 100,000 tests. And this is thinking ahead, not necessarily for right now, but obviously this thing is likely to be with us for some time, and so we must be in a position to be able to do the level of testing that will give us the comfort for some level of economic and other activities to be able to take place going down the road. Part of the process, of course, is to establish some additional testing centers, and we started that around the country, including several of the polyclinics, as well as the field medical facility at Chemets Lane, which is being used primarily as a respiratory center, national respiratory center. And that process has started. We're building it up gradually because training has to take place to bring more persons on board to be able to competently do the swabbing or taking of the samples. And then at the lab itself, we were fortunate to have received some assistance through the Ministry of Agriculture in providing some additional lab technicians to assist those at the Best Dos Santos lab to be able to do more testing on a daily basis. And the provision of these additional supplies and materials will allow us to be able to really ramp up and do the level of testing, as I said, that is desired and desirable. So this is basically what this is all about, and there's not much more you can say about it. But what I can say at this stage is that the Ministry of Health and Wellness is really thankful that the Ministry of Finance, Economic Affairs and Investment, even in these difficult and challenging times, given the state of the Treasury in terms of economic activity, bringing in the necessary revenue, but recognizing the importance of being able to facilitate this for the country and for us to be able to get over this COVID-19 situation, we've been able then to get some of the financial assistance that we require to be able to do the job. And I would also like at this stage to really, on behalf of, I would say, the entire country and this chamber, to say thank you to those, I believe there are 5 ladies at the Best Dos Santos lab who've been responsible for doing this work, and they've been working very, very hard around the clock. Sometimes they leave the lab at 5 in the morning to return later in the day because they recognize the importance of their effort towards this national fight. So we say thank you, Madam Chair, to them. And with those few remarks, I beg to move that Head 86 stand part.
Question is at Head 86 in the amount of $2 million. I'm sorry, I don't know.
That's all right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of comments, really. We can be so concerned over the immediacy of the physical threat posed to Barbados that we sometimes perhaps may not be sufficiently moved by other aspects of the threat. Simply trying to say that those who are infected by this virus, those who lose their lives, regrettably, as a result of that infection, and their relatives, are not the only victims of this pandemic, but would want to encourage us to be reminded of the fact that there are other victims as well. There are those who are seriously dislocated. There are those who have always been considered to be the vulnerable class in Barbados, or classes in Barbados, or vulnerable sectors in Barbados, who are now made even more vulnerable. There are those who would have lost their jobs, imposing even more hardship on families in Barbados. And we must be careful not to forget that even prior to COVID, we were in a very difficult situation, causing stresses at the domestic level in Barbados. A lot of it induced by the economic misfortunes to which we have been subject in recent times. Trying to remind us that there are other victims today, those who've lost their jobs, those who are made even more vulnerable now and more exposed, those who have been dislocated. I simply want to urge government that they bring similar level of urgency to addressing their situations as we do to addressing the matters which are immediately before us relative to the health response, so that we will vote money, that we can acquire equipment, and that we can acquire other resources needed in the fight. But I believe that we need to redouble the effort to bring a similar level of urgency to addressing issues relative to those other victims which I just identified. Whether it's true ensuring that there's a greater level of efficiency with respect to expediting matters through the NIS, through the mitigation unit in the Office of the Prime Minister, through the Household Survivals program, through the Ministry of Elder Affairs and Empowerment, because, Madam Chair, I get and have been getting a lot of calls from people around the country with respect to this issue, that they feel that the channels of communication are not necessarily working as efficiently as they might. So you call numbers suggested, you call departments and agencies recommended, and you do not get a speedy response, or you do not get a response at all. There are some people who are relying on NIS benefits of various types, who believe that their plight is being forgotten because of the serious nature of the immediate health-related risk. Calls also from persons, Madam Chair, who feel that they're being victimized by employers in Barbados. This government, if it is to fully respond to the present distress in Barbados, must not only treat to the medical and the immediate health issues, but must respond as well to the other social and economic offshoot issues which have been caused by the presence of this thing. And I believe that there's a sense, perhaps too widely felt in Barbados right now, that this is something not being as fully addressed as it ought to be addressed. I'm not laying a charge. You're an MP, Madam Chair, I'm sure you get calls. I get calls from St. Michael West, I get calls from other places of people who feel not being heard. I don't have the necessary recourse that I should have in my particular situation. People who feel that they're being pressured now by employers who are taking this opportunity to do perhaps what they always wanted to do in the first place without regard to the legal and lawful processes. Before I sit, and may I say this, and it may appear to be unusual, but let that be as it may. I want to commend the Honourable Minister of Health, member for the city, for the role that he's playing in leading in this fight. I know a lot of it redounds to the advice, the counsel, the support, the leading of the health professionals and other public sector officials. But at the end of the day, if we don't get on top of this, if things go wrong and people start to call for heads, one of the first heads they will look for will be that of the Honourable Minister of Health. People talk about governments, people talk about leaders of governments, but at the end of the day, he who is charged with the responsibility of health-related matters in Barbados is the Honourable Member for the city. And I want to commend him for the role he is playing in this particular fight at this hour, and pray for your safety and blessing.
Thank you. You had a seconder last time, right? You have a seconder already? Go ahead. All right. Question is that head 86 in the amount of $2 million. Stand par. All honourable members in favor, please say aye. All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it. Question is that I do now report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of one resolution in committee. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman of committees has reported the passing of one money resolution in Standing Finance Committee. Honourable Member for City of Bridgetown.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this resolution be read a first time.
The question is that this resolution be read a first time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the resolution be read a second time.
The question is that the aforementioned resolution be read a second time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the resolution be agreed to.
The question is that this resolution be agreed to. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. All those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This resolution now stands passed.
Order number 11, in the name of the Honourable Minister of Finance, to move the second reading of the Income Tax Amendment Bill 2020.
Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It certainly is not my intention to detain the House further because, as you can appreciate, sir, the country is still in the midst of a very serious public health challenge, and we have been doing all that we can do, sir, to first contain the spread of COVID-19. so that we can move to certainly the next phase with respect to how we want to lead an effective recovery. Now, these amendments before the chamber, sir, and I want to, just before I get into it very quickly, just reiterate something that the honourable member for the city would have raised in his contribution in the earlier debate. That whilst the extension of the notice, sir, for the public health emergency, given where we are, sir, is until June 30th, at this stage, the government certainly, and I want to just clarify, because I've received some WhatsApp messages querying whether or not that relates to the extension of the curfew. And I know the member was quite clear to indicate that it was the extension of the public health emergency. And just to remind the public, sir, that as we have gone through this process, we went from stage 0 to stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3, which we are currently at. And it is at stage 3, sir, that we had announced the curfew. And certainly with respect to the support of all Barbadians, and certainly continue with the support of the public health officials, that we hope to be in a position, sir, very soon to start to move back to some semblance of normalcy, even though there may still be the presence of COVID in the country. So I just want to make it clear that the extension with respect to the public health emergency is not necessarily, sir, related to the extension of the current curfew. That relies very heavily, sir, on all Barbadians continuing to follow the directions from the public health officials, because we certainly want to be in a position, as has been articulated, sir, to say to the country how we will move back to some sense of normalcy during this time. And therefore, as the public health officials are now doing their work to ramp up testing during this time, you've just seen the vote with respect to the monies to increase, in a sense, the testing, sir, then we hope to be in a position to be able to move back to a stage during that time so that we are able to continue, sir, at least jumpstart the rest of the economy as a result of being able to move back to those stages. The public will be reminded, sir, that during the stage 0 to stage 3, we announced specific guidance on terms of gatherings and those kinds of things, sir. And I know that going forward, sir, similar things will be announced. I just wanted to make that abundantly clear that the extension of the public health emergency is not necessarily, sir, related to the extension of the curfew. So long as Barbadians, sir, continue to follow the advice of the public health officials, and if anybody's feeling any effects of COVID-19 or any of the respiratory illnesses, sir, as the member for the city has indicated, get yourself tested, sir, so that we can do the appropriate intervention, should that be required, so that we can then certainly, sir, look to be able to open up things much sooner. But I think it's important to state that, sir, because similarly, the member for the city indicated that as we have all recognized, we have to manage the public health issues first. That has a consequence, certainly, for the Treasury, sir, quite clearly. And therefore, it is in that context that I wanted to make it clear that, first and foremost, the government's responsibility is to protect all Barbadians. And we will do what is required, sir, to ensure that we put the appropriate resources to the full management, sir, and effective management with respect to the public health crisis, so that we can, whenever we emerge from this, sir, that we emerge from this process as healthy as we could be given the circumstances, so that persons can go about their activity and do what they have to do, sir, in a safe way. Now, sir, during this time, as you know, April is normally income tax filing season, and as we all know, I myself, sir, would do some tax clinics to help persons file their income taxes. The Barbados Revenue Authority will also do tax clinics, sir, in order to help Barbadians with their filing. We know filing, yes, whilst most persons file electronically, there are still those among us, sir, for whom they need assistance to be able to do those filings. And given the fact that we have been in a curfew, certainly some of those persons will be disadvantaged.
And I want to report to this Honourable Chairman and to the country, sir, that there will be an extension of the filing deadline beyond April 30th, which will now go to May 29th, sir, which will give, and once we get through a stage where we can potentially, sir, lift the curfew, then it means that some of those activities can take place, because not everybody can have, not everyone has access to digital platforms, which is why you have the tax clinics in person in the first place. And therefore, once we can deliver not just some of those clinics digitally, that we will be in a position also to help assist those persons with respect to the filing of their income taxes. But certainly, sir, the reality is that with the economy the way it is, we still want persons to be able to file their taxes, and for a very specific reason, sir, because the amendments before the chamber represent the budgetary proposals that were announced last year, March, by the Honourable Member, Prime Minister, Honourable Member for St. Michael North East. And as you would be aware, sir, that at that time we had announced, one, the increase, or the expansion, I should say, sir, of the reverse tax credit threshold from 18,000 to 25,000. And therefore, as those persons who will now file for reverse taxes for the very first time, because as you would recall, sir, it was only related, the $1,300 that would be given as the credit only related to those persons who earn 18,000 or less. And so in this filing season, those persons between 18,000 and 25,000 will be able to file, sir, for those reverse tax credits. And therefore, we want to be in a position, obviously, to be able to deliver that for those persons, even at this, and especially now, sir, at this very, very, very critical time, where everybody requires a little much more assistance than they would before. And so therefore, the part of the amendments here, sir, reflect that change in the policy. Equally, sir, for those persons who would have earned last year between 25,000 and 35,000, these amendments, sir, give effect with respect to giving those persons whatever taxes they would have paid between 25,000 and 35,000, sir, as the compensatory income credit, that those persons now will also get that credit upon filing the income taxes this year. And so this really, sir, whilst there are much more amendments here, I just want to reiterate and encourage all Barbadians to file their taxes. Do so digitally, so that, sir, we are in a position to enhance the processing in the same way that the National Insurance has been able to accelerate their processing with respect to the obvious increase in unemployment benefits. And let me just take the opportunity, sir, to say to Barbadians that, and just to respond to something that was raised earlier. The reality of the circumstances, sir, is that there are a lot of resources or expectations, demands now placed on all of the government departments. And and just to say, sir, that given the impact of the immediate impact of COVID-19, the National Insurance Department, sir, up until a couple of days ago, sir, had received just short of 24,000 unemployment claims. And the reality is, sir, is that those claims have to be processed, and in the same way that persons are making contact with respect to the Household Survival Program, persons are making contact with respect to the Welfare Department, persons are making contact, sir, with respect to the Barbados Revenue Authority. We are working to ensure that the technology and the technological processes are as efficient as possible. I do know, sir, that some persons traditionally don't remember their passwords, sir. They don't remember which email to use when they sign up for TAMIS. And the reality is, sir, that at this very frustrating time, I ask persons to be as patient as possible whilst the various institutions work through what they have to do, sir, in order to respond to Barbadians. I know that the Barbados Revenue Authority has certainly not, the for a lot of Barbadians, given the buildup of tax refunds that were owed to them for some time, is not perhaps the most favorite agency of most Barbadians. But we have started, sir, to repay a significant amount of those tax refunds. There may still be a few persons who are owed a few a few refunds, sir. Those will be resolved, sir. But as we go through this process now, sir, I want to appeal especially, sir, to those persons for whom the reverse tax credit certainly applies, as well as the compensatory income credit, sir, for them to file their income taxes as soon as possible so that the processing of those refunds can be done as quickly as possible so that we are in the best position, sir, to start to respond to those persons, given that a significant amount of those persons, sir, across the country will be the hardest hit with respect to the impact of COVID-19 at this time. I equally, sir, want to take this opportunity to say to all Barbadians, sir, whether it is income tax, sir, whether it is unemployment benefits, whether it is sickness benefits, sir, whatever it is, sir, I want to impress upon all Barbadians to use the opportunity, sir, to provide your banking or credit union account information, sir, so that the processing of these things can be much smoother. That is important, sir, because it means that you don't have to wait for a check to come in the mail. It means the money goes directly into your bank account, and certainly so that you have greater access with respect to that. Because we are trying as much as possible, sir, to eliminate the lines to wait to get monies for cash, and therefore, if persons supply that information, then it allows for all of the agencies, sir, to better process and manage the distribution of these funds, whatever the funds happens to be, whether it's your pension, sickness benefit, whatever it is, sir, so that we can do that as easily as possible, so that especially at this time, that these are some of the things, sir, that can be done that would reduce certainly the risk with respect to the impact of COVID-19 on anyone as they seek to transact their business. And so we have been in consultation with both the banks and the credit unions to ensure that even at this time, that they try to onboard as many of those persons digitally, sir, so that as part of the response to COVID-19, whether it's the national insurance and the pensioners, sir, that we encourage them to come online digitally in order to be able to help fight the spread of COVID-19. And so, sir, there are much more amendments in this bill, but I want to stress, and all of it would have been announced, sir, with respect to the budget of last year. But the reality is, sir, that at this particular time, we want to ensure that we can use the technology, certainly in government, with the assistance of the citizens, with providing the banking or credit union account information, sir, that allows the government, sir, to respond to you, especially at this time. I know in the past, people like to come and sign for the check and go to the bank and go through that process. But right now, sir, your time is valuable, and we want to be in a position, sir, to allow for ordinary Barbadians to be as protected as possible, and therefore reduce the actual number of physical contact points, sir, as humanly possible. And therefore, I want to reiterate, sir, that we, and say to all Barbadians, that use this particular time, sir, in order to ensure that your digital engagement with government can be as seamless as possible, so that we can do the business as quickly as possible. It actually takes time to print the checks. And the reality is, sir, is that the national insurance goes through it every month with the pension checks, the unemployment checks, the sickness checks, sir, all of it. And if the Revenue Authority has to go through and print, it literally takes the time, as opposed to simply uploading a batch file, goes to the bank, and it's there. And therefore, we know that certainly under the circumstances with respect to the public health emergency and the extent to which persons' movement have been limited with respect to the curfew, that it is important that you spend your time now, sir, as efficiently as possible. So therefore, I'm asking all Barbadians to work with the government in order to ensure that any monies that we pay to you, that we can do so digitally, so that you can go and spend your time literally doing that business that you want to be able to do. And so, sir, these amendments before the chamber, as I said, reflects the Prime Minister's announcement in the budget of last year, of March 2019. As you know, sir, it delivered significant tax cuts all across to all Barbadians, and therefore we know that even from this year, the top tax rate went down from 33% to 28.5%. All of that is included in all of those amendments are here, sir. There's elements with respect to the foreign currency earning allowance as well, sir, included here. And therefore, whilst this, at this time, it is important, sir, that we re-emphasize that the government wants to be in a position to focus on those persons who will benefit, certainly from the reverse tax credit between $18,000 and $25,000, and encourage those persons to, yes, register and file for the reverse tax credit so that they can be paid the $1,300, as well as encouraging those persons who have earned between $25,000 and $35,000 so that they can get back those monies as quickly as possible. Because I know, sir, that with that increase in unemployment benefits, unemployment claims, that obviously we anticipate that there may be a few more going forward, given that not all of the claims are in as yet. But we want to be in a position, sir, to ensure that first, the public health crisis is contained so that we can get Barbadians back to work as quickly as possible. And so the government is prepared, sir, to work certainly with the officials of the Ministry of Health to ensure that we can first cover down COVID-19, sir, in Barbados, so that we can move to that very critical next phase, which is really to start to implement the recovery going forward. And with those few words, sir, I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
The question is that this bill be read a second time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that you do now leave the chair and the House resolve itself in committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that the Speaker do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
This House is now in committee.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Clause 1 stand part.
Question is that Clause 1 stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Clause 2 stand part.
Question is that Clause 2 stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Clause 3 stand part.
Question is that Clause 3 stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 4.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Clause 4 stand part.
Question is that Clause 4 stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 5.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Clause 5 stand part.
Question is that Clause 5 stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 6.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Clause 6 stand part.
Question is that Clause 6 stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 7.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Clause 7 stand part.
Question is that Clause 7 stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 8.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that clause 8 stand part.
Question is that clause 8 stand par. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 9.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that clause 9 stand part.
Question is that clause 9 stand par. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 10.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that clause 10 stand part.
Question is that clause 10 stand par. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 11.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that clause 11 stand part.
Question is that clause 11 stand par. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 12.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that clause 12 stand part.
Question is that clause 12 stand par. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 13.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that clause 13 stand part.
Question is that clause 13 stand par. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 14.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that clause 14 stand part.
Question is that clause 14 stand par. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
The first and second schedules.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that the first and second schedule be the first and second schedule to the bill.
Question is that the first and second schedules be the schedules to the bill. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that you do not report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee.
Question is that I do not report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman of committees has reported the passing of one bill in committee. Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read a third time.
Questions that the bill be read a third time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be now passed and cited as the Income Tax Amendment Act 2020.
The question is that this bill be now passed and so cited. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This bill is passed and so cited. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With that, we've come to the end of today's sitting. I therefore beg to move that the House be adjourned for a date to be fixed.
The question is that this House be adjourned for a date to be fixed. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This House hereby stands adjourned for a date to be fixed.